Hello everybody, my name is Wasim. We are Finals 4 and we are here to do the executive brief. Like I said, my name is Wasim. I am joined with Jack, Logan, Fagan, Nevin, and Jacob. Their respective roles are on the screen. The quick overview, we have the methodology, the assessment objectives and scope, the executive summary, vulnerabilities, key strengths, and area for improvement. For the assessment objectives, we really wanted to focus on the vulnerability discovery and retesting. For this portion, we wanted to make sure that we were able to retest all the vulnerabilities we found in the first test that we did a few months ago. There, we were making sure that a lot of the vulnerabilities were remediated in these types of environments and making sure that if anything needs to be reevaluated, we were able to do that. Next, we went ahead and went to find new vulnerabilities in the environment. The scope was expanded. There is a new website called YYY.chat, and new vulnerabilities were introduced into the environment. We wanted to make sure that we were able to find everything and allow you guys to get the most value out of our assessment. The next thing we wanted to go ahead and do is display the business impact of these vulnerabilities to your company. A big important factor is that these vulnerabilities do affect the business and how it functions. So making sure that you are able to analyze each vulnerability and decide where your funds need to go is an important factor of our assessment. Finally, we want to be able to provide a good remediation and mitigation plan for every single one of these vulnerabilities. We don't want to leave you hanging there. We want to make sure that you're not lost whenever these vulnerabilities do come up. You know exactly where to go and how to remediate them. Next, I'll pass it off to Jack to go ahead and talk about the scope.
Thanks, Wasim. I'm going to talk a little bit about the scope here today, about our operations and what Oui Croissant contracted us to do. Primarily, we were concerned with a range of Unix and Windows machines across a development network and a production network. If I stop speaking English at any point, you are more than welcome to yell at me. Additionally, in scope were several LLMs, or large language models, primarily used by Oui Croissant's operations for their YYY.chat web application, which was also in scope and much more critical this time around, shall we say. Additionally, social engineering was in scope this time, but with a bit of an expansion. AI vision, utilizing IT manager Jamie Thompson's voice, and open source intelligence, or open internet gathered data, was used to perform an AI phishing attack, as well as an email phishing attack. I'm going to hand it off to Logan real quick, and he's going to tell you a little bit about the executive summary and some important takeaways.
Thank you, Jack. During the assessment, we saw that there were several critical vulnerabilities that were found across both the network and the web application. Something that I want to point on is that we did find that a lot of our previous vulnerabilities found in the last assessment were remediated. So we did see some improvement there, approximately 10 fully remediated, and then 2 partially remediated. So while we're very happy to see that there are quick remediations in place and that the attack surface itself has seemed to just be in a better state than when we last found it, we did end up finding a total of 37 vulnerabilities, including these previous non-remediated vulnerabilities. One of the vulnerabilities that I'd like to touch on here was a vulnerability that allowed a user on the YYY.chat platform to post as any user. Given that Oui Croissant is a social media company, and we're seeing increasingly more important figures step into social media, being able to post as one of these figures could lead to massive implications, whether it's a global or just users not necessarily being fully secure in what they're actually posting, and potentially at risk if dangerous posts are put on your profile. Additionally, we saw a vulnerability that allowed somebody to authenticate to an internal database, which, though we didn't see it at this time, could in the future lead to potential data breaches and customer leakage. This was something that we touched upon with the team over the course of the engagement, so I figured I'd highlight it here. I'll let Fagan touch on some of the more depth of these vulnerabilities.
Thank you, Logan. Coming up is the vulnerabilities that we discovered. Of those 37 vulnerabilities that was discovered in this engagement, most of them are spread across medium, high, and critical vulnerabilities. Don't let this just scare you. Most of the critical vulnerabilities that was discovered is in the internal network, and those are caused by misconfigurations in the Active Directory environment. This requires the threat actor to be inside your network to be able to exploit this and potentially gain domain access privileges and obtain your PII and employee data and exploit those. Next coming up is medium and high vulnerabilities that discovered. Most of these were in your product, YYY chat, and multiple chains of these attacks combined together can lead up to gaining access to your backend, and potentially they can obtain your customer data, leak those, and that is going to impact your reputation in your customers' eyes. Coming up also is informational and low vulnerabilities. Please don't overlook these because improving your security is important also to reduce your low and informational, and that's going to help secure your internal and external network as well.
All right, moving on to the key strengths. So a few things we saw that we thought were really good. Monitoring. So your monitoring team and SOC analysts were able to catch some of the things we were doing on the network and also collaborate with us to see if they saw any anomalous traffic and confirming that it was us and not some malicious entity. Next is the client communication. If we ever had problems with inside during the penetration test, we could easily reach out to the point of contact and they would be able to get back to us really quickly. Along with that, we noticed that the client was very interested in what we were doing and wanted to learn more. So we can tell they're very ambitious and motivated the overall security of the company. During our retesting phase, we noticed that 12 out of the 17 vulnerabilities were actually fixed. This is very impressive given the short amount of time. So we want to give props to your security team for fixing this. Finally, the endpoint protection. We noticed that a lot of the hosts contain endpoint protection, which prevented a lot of the attacks that we had. In saying that, we did notice some hosts, such as critical services, such as the Active Directory domain controller and the email server, did not have these endpoint protections. So we recommend enabling these as they are very efficient at preventing these attacks. I'll pass it off to Jacob to wrap it up.
All right, moving on to technical areas for improvement. The first area for improvement would be the Active Directory environment. The Active Directory environment is what enables your employees to collaborate, work effectively, and build products for your end users. Think about it like an engine. If you have the best car in the world, but the engine isn't there, then the car is not going to run. In the Active Directory environment, as Fagan said, we saw many high and critical vulnerabilities. These vulnerabilities are easily fixable by simple configuration changes. So our key recommendation here is to fix those vulnerabilities by changing the simple configurations. The next part of the testing, we focused on web application as well as the API. Now these are things that your users interact with directly. These are the products that you're building. So it's extremely important that users can feel confident and secure that they are secure applications. To do this, we recommend following industry best practices for secure coding as well as implementing a DevSecOps team. Moving on, we had the opportunity to assess the LLMs, 7 LLMs that had not been released yet, and 1 LLM that was in the production environment as a chat. Our key recommendation here is to allow a security assessment group to assess an LLM before it gets put into production to be a support chat. Now I'm going to move on to the conclusion. So our key recommendations here, we believe, will greatly reduce the risk to the core business here. The first one being vulnerability management. As we said, there were a lot of vulnerabilities that were patched, but some that weren't patched. Moving on, we'd like to recommend continuous assessment. This is basically bringing us in to come and find vulnerabilities that we might not have found before. And the last thing is employee training. Training your employees on best secure coding practices, as well as making sure that those misconfigurations in Active Directory have been patched by the IT administrator, we believe will greatly increase the likelihood for your security to be as robust as possible. We want to thank you guys so much for partnering with us for this pen test, and we'd like to open the floor up for any questions.
Great, thanks very much, guys. Very good. So, my team has been telling me that we should be adopting the zero trust model across the board. I was wondering if you'd agree to that based on what you saw.
Yeah, so zero trust is kind of a buzzword in the industry. Essentially what zero trust means is that no party in any